Hello, and welcome to Change the Face of Yoga, teaching toddlers through golden oldies. I'm very excited to be talking to lots of yoga teachers who will explain their passion for teaching yoga to students with different ages, physical fitness levels, wellness levels, and different goals. They will explain the benefits of yoga for these students and will be including teacher tips and pose modifications. I am Stephanie Cunningham of Yoga Lightness, and I've been teaching over 50s for 10 years. So this area is my passion and the passion of many other yoga teachers that you will be listening to in this series. Thank you so much for listening, and let's get started.
This is episode 112 of Changing the Face of Yoga, and my guest today is Carol Confino. Carol has been a nurse for over 20 years. And she's now shifted to preventing illness and disease, becoming a teacher, a yoga health coach, and a certified yoga therapist. She's found ways of dealing with depression, self-doubt, and anxiety. The simple process of noticing when these issues come up begins the process of overcoming. So, welcome, Carol. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that particular introduction?
No. Just to clarify, I was an RN way back. I was an RN for 14 years, but it's been 20 years since I've actually been a practicing nurse. But I've been teaching yoga since 2006. So, transition.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes, we all are doing that, aren't we?
Yes.
Okay. I was reading the form that you gave me, and I was very interested in what you were talking about, doing desk yoga classes at a health fair.
Yeah.
And you said it's a really different format from just doing office yoga or, corporate yoga or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it was interesting because I hadn't really thought about doing much corporate, but I was offered this job to do a health fair, not so much in handing out flyers about my business or anything, but to teach office yoga. And the first time I had done hour-long workshops at offices in the past, but I wasn't sure how this was going to work in a health fair. And I hit on what I call pause practices. I had done a workshop at my studio, Sun and Moon Yoga Studio here in Fairfax, Virginia. And they, with that, I did practices to pause during the day, where you just take a minute or less and do some kind of practice that's going to either change your mind or your body in some way. So I used some of that and some of the things that I did with the desk yoga. And there were a few practices that when I did them really resonated with people who didn't usually do yoga. So that's when it kind of hit me that there's a whole population, because I've gone in offices and I've done a yoga class before or after work. But in actually having it as part of their workday. Because, yoga is more about mindfulness, being aware. And when you start to become aware of when your posture is getting out of whack, what can you do? And, you can go through all the alignment cues and things and sit up and you can bring your shoulders back. But I found that just, bringing your arms out to a T position brings in all the alignment cues, and then you can add some practices that bring some strength up into your shoulders so you don't round forward so much. And if you incorporate that during your day, like as you're typing away on the computer, you notice you're rounding and you're in the middle of a thought, bring your arms out to a T, you've just broken up the muscles that were tight, rounding you forward. And then you go back to typing and you roll down again. When you get to a breaking point where you're like in your work, like you've come to the end of the thought or the paragraph, you can do some stretches that will keep your shoulders up and keep you in better alignment, because it's not so much the rounding forward that's bad, it's staying there.
Mm.
So if you can, a couple of times an hour, come in and out of it, and if you do some, and my little shtick to get them to sit and listen, because everybody's in a hurry. All these practices take a minute or less. And I have about 20 different ones, minute meditations, eye exercises, the shoulders and the arms. And so those, they all fit into a nice little format, and I give them a little handout they can take back to their desk, that goes through all the practices, some breathing practices, some energy medicine practices. And I go over the ones that are more unusual. And then I say, you can look, everybody can round and arch their back and roll the shoulders, but explaining some of the things that I do that can keep you in better alignment and get you through your day a little more comfortably.
Oh, how clever. That's really interesting. I'm sitting here doing the tea thing.
Yeah. If you do that T and then bring your arms in a cactus position so you bend your elbows.
Yeah, I am.
Okay. So if you turn your palms towards your head,
okay,
your upper back muscles are getting a little stretch, and so your shoulders, and the chest is contracting, but they're not moving any bone really. Turn your palms away, and now the upper back muscles contract and the chest muscles stretch. So you go back and forth between those two.
Yeah.
And then bring your arms down without moving your shoulders. And I found this out from doing it over and over again. By the end of the day, when I go to round my shoulders, I would feel a little more resistance than I did before I did the cactus arms, which is different than if you bring your arms behind your back and squeeze your shoulders together. Your shoulders can immediately come forward because you haven't gotten the stabilizing muscles to stay there. So that's like a revelation for a lot of very tight men, particularly, but even women. They come and they do this and they notice it right away. And there's a couple of other ones that I do. And I talk about how to fit that practically into your day, just like I said, in your middle of something. And then when you get to a stopping point, then you do the stabilizing things. And like before you go on break, you can do some eye exercises. There are lots of different, there's even more than, like, I didn't even go into the wrist on the ones I do at the office. The wrist is much more subtle to work with.
Yeah, I saw you had a YouTube video on it.
Yeah, I had some on there, and I'm going to have a little course. I'm doing this, I'm doing the health fairs, and then I started making up, like doing the whole little handout that I have is going to come out as a course where all 20 practices are done, and the minute meditations I have recorded about a minute and a little longer, because I just start, welcome them, and then do about a minute. And so if somebody wanted to, like, because I've had people ask me when I've done this in offices, do you have any videos with this? And, I said, I have a few on YouTube, but this is going to be an actual, like a little course package.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, I think it's hard for people when they're working to take that time to take an hour or so for a yoga class, but just to get that habit in of really noticing where your shoulders are or whatever is quite clever, really, because they can do that without really taking away from their time at work.
No, and it makes them aware of, okay, now, because actually if you do it over and over again, it actually becomes more comfortable to sit upright. You're really working your body very hard, rounding your shoulders forward. And like I said, it's not a bad position, but the strongest position for your spine is when your head is balanced on top of the spine.
Yeah.
So that's what, once you get your muscles used to that again, because that's how you were when you were a little kid, your head couldn't go forward because it was so heavy. Babies, when they sit up bolt upright, because that's where your spine is the strongest. You don't usually see little kids with rounded shoulders because their heads are so heavy that when they bring them forward, it throws their balance off. But if you kind of get aware that this is really more comfortable, and also it gets them moving, even if it's very not, get up and walk around the office. But even when you're in your chair, you can change your position a lot. And quite frankly, when if you've seen a belly dancer move, they have their arms in a T position. They can bring a lot of movement to their body.
Yes, they can.
But they don't have, but their shoulders stay where they are. So it's actually not a very tight position. Rounded shoulders, you can't move as well. You're restricted because you're crushing your chest. If the belly dancer had rounded shoulders, she couldn't get that movement down through the rib cage because she's crushing it. But if you bring your arms up, you actually can get a lot more movement. Your body is freer to twist. And not that you're going to stay still. Your body likes to move. Your eyes like to move. Those are all things. And what you do every day is going to have more of an impact than what you do once a week in a yoga class, or at least as much impact. And, developing habits that are sustainable, that aren't hard, that nobody ever from doing yoga classes and work. We've had master teachers like Leslie Kaminoff and all that. He talks about even how you walk. You can if you really are mindful of how you walk, it can help prevent some, bunions and things like that from just being aware of how your body's designed, which we didn't come with a book of how to
an instruction book.
Instruction book. And so you kind of winging it. And then when somebody talks about, what bones hit the floor first, when you put more weight on the outside edge of your foot, you're going to get a bunion there because it's protecting. If you, work on your muscles, which isn't just the foot, it's the muscles of the leg and all that are all connected. And, bringing people in with these simple things they do at the desk, it might get them more interested in some of these other aspects that aren't necessarily yoga poses, but like mindful movement and mindful sitting.
Okay, well, let's go into that. How do you define mindful sitting?
Well, mindful sitting is noticing, because noticing when my shoulders are rounded forward, first of all, where your feet are. Are you really comfortable where you are? Because I do chair classes with my classes at the studio sometimes. And when you do like cactus arms, when you're seated, notice that what happens with your feet and your legs too. If you don't cross your legs, your feet kind of come flat on the floor and the knees come over the ankles and your rib cage is lifted and you're in alignment without me telling you anything else. Now, it's good to break it up and really notice and why you want everything aligned. But your knee, your knee likes to be at a right angle or maybe a little bit straighter. But, what was I just hearing? I was just something on the radio about, when you put your car on cruise control, now they're saying, put your feet flat on the floor in the car and sit up a little, more, because when you take your foot off, people do all kinds of things. But anytime you habitually do the same movement, always have your knees apart or together, it's going to put strain on the knee and, ankle or wherever. If you always cross your legs real, tight, that's going to start working on your hip. Just kind of noticing and being aware. And when you're go on.
No, I was just going to ask do you give them help with getting that habit into their daily movement? I think that would be the hardest thing, is just remembering to do it each time or several times.
I'm building this as a business idea. I started with this office yoga with the health fairs. And then I'm going to start, what I want to do is work with either local companies or even online doing my ideal is to have like little 15-minute things once a week or a couple of times a month, because much longer people don't really want to do a lot, like at work. There, when you're busy, saying take an hour and for this relaxation practice or whatever is too much time. 15 minutes sounds reasonable. And then, I'll have time for questions after. But what I can talk with them about whatever their issues are. And it's like chipping away. So if you first get this idea of just coming into that cactus once in a while, when you're at your desk, you see, when you find that successful, then you start to notice other things. And I have talked to people about, do you notice, okay, it's always this arm. Well, what do you do with that arm that always hurts? I mean, is that the arm you use your mouse with? And, it's just sometimes just varying your position a little bit can make a big difference in what kind of wear and tear you do on your body.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, so that's kind of what I can build it into any of these things. I'm creating little courses of things that I've learned over the years from master teachers and also from my own experience in working with brand new people to yoga. Because it's the type people that really need yoga. It's the people who aren't going to go to work an hour early with yoga clothes and then change and go to work. These are the people that are just going to sit at their desk and, eat, not do anything unless it's really quick and easy. Because they come up and they'll go, like some of the CEOs or the, people running the health fairs will come over and they say, oh, office yoga, what is that? Or it's called all different things, desk stretches. Each place has a different name. But they say, oh, I only have about 5 minutes. So I just say, okay, I can do something in a minute or less. And I do it. And you can see in their eye that it made an impression, like, wow, that does feel different. And it was so easy. And that's what a lot of these, it's really easy. And especially when you think about it, even mindful sitting, you kind of, once somebody brings your attention to it, you think, my outer part of my knee, that is always getting, pulled out because I sit with my knees apart all the time. And it's fine to do, like I said, all of these positions, like I tell the people at the health fairs, is none of these positions is wrong for your body. It's just what you do all the time is going to cause wear and tear. So kind of knowing what is neutral for your body, or think, and it's not even, you don't even have to have me tell you, but because you can kind of know what isn't putting any stress on your muscles. If you have, well, I always use the example. If you ever carried a crate or something and you had your fingers around it and you had to hold it longer than you expected and your fingers don't open really quick, that's what happens to your back. But we sit with our back rounded forward for an hour. And that's what happens with any muscle you hold in one position for a long time. Our muscles are meant to move. And whether we think about it or not, we're always moving. Like even when you hold a coffee cup with your hand, you move your fingers up and down. You're never perfectly still. And we don't think about that. But we do sit in front of the computer now. And I think as we do more and more on the computer, it is going to take its toll on our eyes, on the body. They show that picture of how, people progress from Cro-Magnon man, the little chimps up, and then they're going back. I've seen pictorials where they show it coming back down and this guy sitting at his desk all curled up, looking just like the monkey at the beginning, because that's what we're working is whatever you do over and over is going to change your body, and that's what, people develop the hunchback and their shoulders are always rounded. And that has long-term health impacts. what I usually have next to my station when I go to these health fairs is there's an article in the was an article in the Washington Post that you can Google just by putting in "Don't just sit there." And what it is it's a picture of a guy over his desk and a cross section, and next to it, it's got all the things that can happen from sitting improperly. And what that picture does is it draws people over, either laughing or concerned a little bit. But that is, it shows, it crushes your heart. It doesn't let your lungs open up just from the way you hold your body. And people know that it's not working well. And then when you kind of explain that, it's really, your body was meant to sit upright. You've let certain muscles get stronger and other ones get weak, that you feel like rounded forward is more comfortable. But after a while, I notice as soon as my shoulders round forward now, just because I've been doing yoga for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, those are, and one other thing I do with the eyes is like eye exercises. And it struck me that even working in the office when we didn't have the computer doing everything, you would get up from your desk to look up information. You'd have to go over, get a book, find it on the shelf, bring it down, and then your focus would change 4 or 5 times just looking up something. So your eyes got a little movement, and your eyes didn't stay right in center, right on this middle of the screen and just move in, like an 8-inch or 12-inch square. Even with the big screen, it's still only about 18 inches. Your eyes got a lot more range. And if we keep on for 8 hours looking the same distance away with the same focus, because now you can look up everything online. You don't have to move. And it's taking its toll on the eyes as well. And those are really simple, just looking near and far, making a point, like before you go on break, when your eyes are a little fuzzy, focus far away, focus near in. If you have a window, look out the window. Think about looking around, up, down, and then the sides. So these are all little things that don't take any time. You don't need a yoga mat. You don't need special clothes. But it's yoga. It's your mind becoming aware of your body, and then breathing practices to calm you down or to get you energized. There's all kinds of practices that can be done in a very short period of time.
Excellent. I really think that's interesting because I mean, you're doing the essence of yoga, aren't you? Of noticing, of being present and feeling what your body and your breath and your mind are doing. And that's basically yoga, is more than the asanas by any means. So, where do you see this going? I mean, it sounds like a very accessible, easy to do kind of practice that has a lot of benefits. So, how do you see it growing?
Well, I'm just trying to get it started going now, but I think like having like either live or recorded 15-minute like little sessions periodically, and seasonal, like doing packages of seasonal or topical, like could be longer 45-minute sessions if places want something like that can be customized to what the needs of an organization would be. You could bring in all kinds of practices like for anxiety and depression, for sleep, and just pain. I have a lot resources from all different I've had certifications for yoga for depression, and even with the brain longevity, and memory, and incorporating right and left brain, and work like that can all be brought in, made it really simple and easy practices that aren't that can be brought into any of these companies. And I could my ideal is at some point to have, people doing year-long program where, either a monthly or biweekly or quarterly packages where I could do either these short ones, and even like for new employees when they come in, maybe have a recording, like a Zoom or not a webinar, but a little video of me of going through the basics of these press pause practices. This taking a practice and sort of incorporating it every day. On the front of the flyer that I give out, it usually says pick one or two to do each, for the day, and see which ones benefit you the most. And then maybe there's ones you always go to. And what happens eventually is you notice, oh, I really need this one now. This end of the day practices, things like to leave work at work. So all of these, like recreating either through a breath practice or a mindfulness practice at the end of the day, instead of rushing out the door, do something that like almost like a little, not a ceremony, but a little thing that work is over. I clear my mind, I clear my thoughts, and just, let everything go. And now I'm ready to go home, and I'm not in a panic getting out the door.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to see more and more corporations are getting more and more into the wellness and into retaining employees and into employee health. And these kind of practices where they can do it anywhere, not even just at the desk. You can do it anywhere, anytime, can be incorporated in your daily life without you having to worry about being flexible. That's the whole thing when you talk to people about doing yoga. They're all worried you have to be very flexible. And the idea is you're really thin and really flexible, and you get into all these positions. And the positions are just a way of someone who is real flexible of getting sensation. But I can't remember who said this, but someone, the difference between a flexible and an inflexible person is how much they have to move to feel the sensation. So someone who's a little tighter doesn't have to move as far.
Yeah.
And they feel it. And somebody else who's more flexible has to move deeper. And everybody's body is different. So things that work for some people aren't going to work for others. And that's where you kind of tailor things in the therapeutic vein that help bring us all together,
Mm.
So I kind of veered off from, but where I'm seeing this is that corporations might be interested in having this be like a regular thing that they can share with their employees. And, it can vary over the year what kind of topics.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I could see where, especially since this sounds a bit cynical, but that it's not taking them away from work. It's just, giving them a little time to reset themselves, as you say. So,
yeah, it's like, what is it? Pause, reset, refresh is like on my website. That's another little catch thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, excuse me. You said you're a yoga therapist. Do you do these kinds of things with your yoga therapy clients also?
I haven't done as many privates with you. I've done in training. I did a lot of yoga therapeutics with clients, but and I also got into like yoga health coaching with Ayurveda, and all of these are like, and Ayurveda, they are in the which Kate Stillman had these 10 practices where you do things in Kaizen. So Kaizen, which is taking little things at a time. And I think between the yoga therapeutics and the yoga health coaching with these health fairs, I kind of combined some of that. And where even when I work with individual students, you give them small things to do, get them to incorporate them in. and then build on that instead of a whole bunch of things to do at once. You say, okay, what is the main focus of what I want, what you want to accomplish, what the client wants to accomplish, and what are the simplest practices that can get you there that you can do easily, along with a more formal practice you can do during the, for like a daily or 3 times a week practice would be longer if I was working with an individual client. But I could also, but between that, what things you could change in between, something simple, like even like a pause practice, bring that in, where if they're working with me for depression or anxiety, a breathing practice. What breathing practice is most effective? We'll try these different ones. Which one would work for you? And use that every time you're feeling stressed. Because with any of the therapeutic things, the earlier you recognize that you're having an issue, the easier it is to head it off. So sometimes in the West here, we tend to ignore pain and ignore signals from our body, which may or may not be pain. They may be just discomfort. But we think we can push through it. And sometimes we can, but it's all taking a toll because pain and discomfort, your body is telling you something.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't listen and make an adjustment, the body is going to get, your pain level usually increases because you keep ignoring the pain signal. And then all of a sudden, things fall apart. You often hear sometimes people, like as a nurse, it would be like, I was healthy and then I had this one thing go wrong and now everything is off. And even back then, before I had done yoga, I'm thinking, it probably was happening all along. You just chose to ignore it.
Mm.
Not always, but like a lot of times you would have, if everything happened, maybe everything is just reached. Your body has this amazing ability to help you do whatever you want to do, even if you're having pain. It will push you through it, but it's taking its toll. And body can compensate for a lot of the things we do, which is why a bunion is a compensation for your gait being in a way that you always are rubbing on that part of the foot. So your body, in order to protect your foot, forms a bunion, forms harder skin there.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of, not everything, but a lot of things, if you start to notice it earlier and instead of ignoring it, take action. That's really helpful, like especially working with people, anxiety and depression and pain, and arthritis, you start working, you do your regular practices, and then you notice when something's aggravating it. And when it's aggravating it, you stop. You stop and then you do a practice that will relieve it and then go back to it. So it's all, again, yoga, your mind listening to your body. Your breath will often be an indicator of when things aren't working well. And if you notice, I notice every time this happens, my breath gets faster, my heart rate goes up a little bit. You do a breathing practice or even just a sigh or something that changes your breathing pattern, changes your muscle movement, and which in turn changes your mind, your mindset and all. So, and this is Global Yoga Therapy Day is coming up. This yoga therapy is fairly new, and a lot of yoga teachers do yoga therapy. They modify things, but the International Association of Yoga Therapists actually created a certification for people who are focusing on doing beyond the poses. Like it's not the pose, and a lot of what I IAYT or International Association is doing is funding and working on research to show that yoga therapy is effective. And it's kind of hard to do some of the yoga therapeutics because a lot of it's preventive. So it can't prove that something didn't happen.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are doing research, with pain, anxiety, arthritis, trauma, and are documenting changes that they see. And so for the next 7 weeks before this comes up, the Global Yoga Therapy, it's on a Facebook page. It's just a Global Yoga Therapy Day. And they're putting up videos every week of somebody's research and, and then other, topics through on the website that might be papers and things like that. So, yeah.
That sounds like a great resource, really.
And a Yoga Mate is a place where you can look up yoga therapists, and they put out all this information. You can get all kinds of names of yoga therapists and how yoga therapy is researched. And this actual Yoga Therapy Day is to highlight how yoga therapy is making itself known a little bit more. Most people don't really think about yoga therapy or don't even know it exists.
Okay, great. Okay, so Carol, the time for the podcast is almost done. Is there anything that you would like to add to what you've said, or talk about a little something else that you would really like the listeners to know?
Just that, I think this is going to be a kind of a, maybe not what I'm doing, but yoga, I think, is going to become more of a useful element, even in medicine and in daily life, even if it's not called yoga. This mindfulness and all is really kind of the wave of the future. So I'm kind of happy to be here at this time and share some of this information with you and your listeners.
Great. Well, thank you. It's been really interesting, and I'm really impressed with how you've made it so accessible, because I think that corporate yoga is probably really needed, and yet it's a difficult place to be because of people that are really, really busy, so it's hard for them to do it. But I think you've done it really cleverly. I think it's really very interesting. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate that you're bringing this information to the listeners, and I'm sure they'll be interested also.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been really nice.
Thank you for that wonderful interview. If you would like to be a guest on Changing the Face of Yoga, please go to my website, www.yogalightness.com.au, and under the Changing the Face of Yoga tab, you can complete Be Our Guest form. After reviewing the form and finding it applicable to this podcast, we will send you a link to schedule an interview. Please download, review, and tell your friends of any podcasts that are of interest to you and to them. If you would like to contact me, send an email to info@yogalightness.com.au. And thank you for listening to Changing the Face of Yoga.